Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into accelerated learning. It's a pretty cool concept. Basically, the idea is that it makes learning faster and more effective, and maybe even more fun.
It could be, yeah.
We've got a stack of research papers and handbooks, even some personal stories that we're going to sift through, so get ready to learn how to supercharge your learning, whether you're teaching or training or just eager to learn new things yourself.
Yeah, what's really fascinating is that accelerated learning, it isn't just about tricks and shortcuts. It actually challenges some fundamental beliefs we have about learning, and it offers a completely new approach.
Okay, I'm all ears. But before we get into the solutions, our sources spend a lot of time on what they call the quote-unquote diseases of traditional learning. And they make it pretty clear that how we learn today is, well, it's kind of broken. So why is that?
Well, a lot of how we approach learning is still based on a model that was developed way back in the 19th century,
Right.
which was a time of factories and mass production. And unfortunately, education adopted a very similar model, kind of the idea of churning out uniform products.
So like students are just cogs in a machine.
Exactly. And this model is still very much in place today, not just in schools, but in corporate training as well. And it leads to this pretty rigid, one-size-fits-all approach to learning that often really misses the mark for learners.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Our sources actually call out a few of these diseases. Some of the names are a bit dramatic, I have to admit, like, Puritanism and excessive testosterone. But what do they actually mean by those terms?
Well, they're using them as metaphors for these deep-rooted beliefs that often hinder effective learning. So Puritanism, for example, that reflects the historical context, where learning was often associated with hard work and discipline, even a sense of punishment sometimes.
Like no pain, no gain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this can make learning feel like a chore instead of something enjoyable and exciting,
Yeah, that definitely resonates with my own experience. I remember feeling so much pressure in school to get the right answer and follow the rules all the time. And it really did suck the joy out of learning for me. Okay, so what about excessive testosterone? That one seems a little aggressive.
Yeah. Well, it's not about gender, but more about overemphasizing certain traits. So it highlights how traditional learning often focuses on competition and control, and a very linear left brain approach.
So like finding a balance between competition and collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Because a little friendly rivalry, that can be motivating, but learning is also about, teamwork and shared discovery, isn't it?
Exactly. We need to cultivate those,
Yeah.
More quote-unquote feminine qualities of learning. Things like collaboration, intuition, and a more holistic approach.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the other diseases that they talk about?
Well, another one is excessive left-brainedness. So traditional learning often prioritizes logic and analysis, but ends up neglecting the creative and visual aspects of learning.
So basically ignoring the amazing power of the right brain.
Exactly. Then there's Western scientific thinking and mind-body separation, which really go hand in hand. Traditional learning, influenced by this worldview, tends to ignore the fact that learning is a full-body experience involving emotions, senses, even our physical environment.
So it's not just about our brains, it's about engaging our whole selves in the learning process. Okay, now that we've kind of diagnosed the problem, I'm really curious to hear about the solutions. What does accelerated learning actually look like in practice?
Well, it's really about making learning a joyous and engaging experience. That uses the full potential of the learner. And a big part of that is understanding that everyone learns differently. One of the key concepts here is the SAVI approach, which stands for visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and intellectual learning styles.
Hold on, can you break down what SAVI stands for? I mean, I'm familiar with the idea of learning styles, but I haven't heard that acronym before.
Oh, sure. So SAVI acknowledges that learners have different preferences and strengths when it comes to how they process information. Some people are visual learners. They learn best through images, diagrams, and videos. Others are auditory learners. They thrive on listening to lectures, discussions, and audio recordings. Then you have kinesthetic learners, who learn best through hands-on activities and movement. And finally, intellectual learners, who prefer to analyze, question, and make connections.
Okay, so it's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach and tailoring the experience to those different styles.
Exactly. Accelerated learning is all about embracing that diversity and using a mix of techniques to engage all learners.
I'm starting to see how this all connects. It's like building a learning environment that caters to everyone's strengths and preferences. So how do we actually do that?
Well, one of the key frameworks for implementing this is the 4-phase accelerated learning cycle: preparation, presentation, practice, and performance.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. I'm ready to hear about these phases.
All right, so the preparation phase. That sets the stage for a positive and receptive learning environment. It involves getting learners excited about the material, setting clear goals, and even addressing any anxieties they might have.
That's a far cry from the sink or swim mentality of traditional classrooms. I like how this sets the tone for a more supportive and encouraging learning experience.
Exactly. Then we move into the presentation phase, where we actually introduce the material. But it's not about passive listening. We use techniques that are engaging and appeal to different learning styles. Think vibrant visuals, storytelling, even music.
So instead of just lecturing at people, we're bringing the material to life and making it memorable.
Precisely. Then the practice phase. This is where learners actively apply what they've learned through interactive exercises, games, simulations, real-world applications.
So learning by doing and experimenting.
Exactly. And finally, the performance phase. This ensures that the learning sticks and translates into real-world results. It's about action planning, ongoing support, and creating opportunities for learners to share their knowledge.
So it's about making sure the learning journey doesn't end when the class is over. But how do we actually make this cycle happen? What are some specific techniques that bring these phases to life? Our sources mention a lot of interesting ideas, like using music and themes.
Music has a profound impact on learning. Think about how a soundtrack can enhance a movie. We can use music in a similar way to create a more positive and receptive learning environment, reduce stress, and even enhance certain cognitive functions.
Like the Mozart effect,
Yeah.
where listening to Mozart is said to boost spatial reasoning skills. I remember reading about that.
Exactly. And beyond specific effects, music can simply set the mood and help learners focus.
Okay, so music is a tool to create a more immersive learning experience. What about these themes I keep hearing about?
Themes are a fantastic way to transform a learning experience into something truly memorable. Imagine a customer service training program with a hospital theme.
Wait, a hospital theme for customer service? How does that work?
Well, they called it Curing an Ailing Card Member. Participants even received toy doctor's kits before the training. And the classroom was decorated like an emergency room, with music from the show MASH playing in the background.
That's brilliant. I can see how a theme like that would grab people's attention and get them thinking about customer service in a new light. But how would you use themes in something more technical or less whimsical, you know?
Well, themes can be adapted to any subject. Another example is the training program at Southern California Edison that used a basketball theme to teach technical skills.
I can see how the energy and teamwork of basketball could translate well to a technical learning environment. It's not just about the visual theme. It's about bringing that energy and spirit into the learning process, too.
Precisely. And themes can be as simple or as elaborate as you want them to be. The key is to make them relevant and engaging for the learners.
Okay, this is really making me rethink how we approach learning. It's about creating an experience that is engaging, memorable, and even fun. What other techniques stand out to you?
Well, another powerful technique is using pictograms, which are visual representations of information. Our brains are actually wired to process visual information much faster than text. So using pictograms can make learning more efficient and impactful.
So instead of relying on dense paragraphs of text, we can use visuals to convey information more quickly and effectively.
Exactly. For example, Children's Medical Center in Dallas. They transformed lengthy flowcharts for life-saving procedures into simple pictograms.
Wow, I can imagine how much that would improve comprehension in emergency situations. But how do we apply pictograms in a more everyday learning setting?
Think about using them to create visual summaries of key concepts, course maps, even note-taking tools. The possibilities are endless.
That's a great point. It's not just about specific scenarios. It's about finding creative ways to incorporate visuals into any learning process.
Exactly. And another technique that can really boost engagement is using question-raising techniques. It's about moving away from passive learning and encouraging learners to ask questions, explore their curiosity, and challenge assumptions.
So instead of just absorbing information, we're making it a more interactive process of inquiry and discovery.
Exactly. And there are so many fun ways to do this. One idea is called question ball, where learners write down questions on pieces of paper, crumple them up, and have a snowball fight.
Wait, a snowball fight in the classroom? That's a far cry from the sit still and be quiet classrooms I grew up in. But I can see how that would inject energy and excitement into learning.
Right. It sounds chaotic, but it's a brilliant way to get learners moving, thinking and interacting with the material. And speaking of shaking things up, learning games are another powerful tool for making learning fun and engaging.
I love that. Games aren't just for kids. They can be an effective way to learn at any age.
Exactly. And they can help reduce stress, improve retention, and foster collaboration.
Okay, I'm definitely getting some ideas for how to spice up my next training session. What other techniques do we need to talk about?
Let's talk about imagery and visualization. Our brains are incredibly visual, so using imagery can really enhance learning and memory.
I've always been fascinated by how visualization can help athletes
Yeah.
improve their performance, but how can we apply that to more academic or professional learning?
Think of it as creating mental movies of the information you're learning. One technique is called imaginary voyage, where learners imagine themselves traveling through a system or process.
So, for example, medical students could take an imaginary voyage through the human body.
Exactly. Or engineers could visualize themselves inside the systems they're designing. It's about creating a multi-sensory experience that engages the imagination and makes the learning more vivid and memorable. We also have to talk about technology. It has the potential to really change the learning game, but we need to be smart about how we use it.
I think there's a tendency to view technology as a magic bullet, but our sources seem to be urging a bit more caution and intentionality.
Absolutely. Technology is a powerful tool, but it shouldn't just automate the same old methods. It's about using technology to create more engaging, interactive, and collaborative learning experiences.
So things like creating web-based learning resources, facilitating online discussions, using multimedia to make learning more dynamic.
Exactly. And speaking of creating and sharing, one source dives into something called rapid instructional design, or RID. It's a faster and more flexible approach to designing learning experiences. That aligns perfectly with the principles of accelerated learning.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued by this. What makes RID different from traditional instructional design?
Traditional instructional design, or ISD, can be pretty rigid and time-consuming. RID, on the other hand, focuses on speed, flexibility, and a learner-centered approach.
So it's about creating learning experiences that are more responsive to the needs of the learners and the ever-changing world we live in.
Exactly. RID provides a framework for designing learning experiences that are both effective and efficient. And it fits perfectly with the principles of accelerated learning.
This is all starting to make so much sense. We're moving from this old factory-like model of learning to something much more personalized, engaging, and even fun.
And it's not just about the techniques. It's about cultivating a whole new mindset towards learning.
Okay, now you've really piqued my curiosity. Let's dive deeper into this accelerated learning mindset. What does that actually mean, and how do we cultivate it?
So before the break, we were starting to talk about this idea of an accelerated learning mindset. It's really about moving beyond just techniques and embracing this whole new way of approaching learning.
I'm so intrigued by this. Our sources keep emphasizing the importance of things like passion and care and courage, and even a willingness to experiment. Why are those qualities so crucial for accelerated learning?
Well, they're really the foundation of a truly transformative learning experience. Let's start with care. Accelerated learning isn't just about efficiency. It's about creating a learning environment that is nurturing and supportive, where learners feel valued and respected.
One source had this beautiful quote. They said, quote, "An AL practitioner is not primarily an information conduit, but a nurturer." It really highlights that human connection, doesn't it?
Yes, and this care extends to the subject matter too. When teachers or trainers are genuinely passionate about what they're teaching, that energy is contagious.
Oh, I have definitely experienced that firsthand. When a teacher is truly excited about a topic, it makes me want to learn more. Okay, so passion and care are key. What about courage? Why is that important in learning?
Well, because accelerated learning often requires us to step outside of our comfort zones. It's about trying new things, embracing the unknown, and being willing to make mistakes.
So it's about letting go of that fear of failure that can hold us back.
Exactly. Mistakes are not seen as setbacks in accelerated learning. They're seen as valuable learning opportunities.
That's a refreshing perspective. It reminds me of the growth mindset concept, where challenges and setbacks are seen as essential for growth. Okay, so we've got passion, care, and courage. What about this willingness to experiment?
That's about being playful and creative. With your approach to learning, trying out different techniques, finding what works best for you.
So it's about becoming a scientist of your own learning process.
Exactly. And it ties back to that need for a learning revolution we talked about earlier. We need to move away from the rigid one-size-fits-all model and embrace a more adaptable and personalized approach.
But how do we make that shift happen? How do we actually spark a learning revolution?
It starts with small steps. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. Choose a specific course, a team, a department, and pilot an accelerated learning program.
So it's about proving the effectiveness of accelerated learning through tangible results.
Exactly. And then share those results with others. Create a buzz. Talk about AL, share articles and resources, invite guest speakers. The more people know about it, the more likely they are to embrace it.
It's about building a community of learners who are excited about this new approach.
Precisely. And technology can play a huge role here. Create online learning communities, share videos and resources, connect with other AL enthusiasts.
It's about using technology to amplify the reach and impact of accelerated learning. But what about buy-in from leadership? I can imagine some organizations might be resistant to change.
You're absolutely right. Involving leadership is crucial. Get them excited about the benefits of AL. Create opportunities for them to experience it firsthand, and show them how it can drive innovation and success.
It's about demonstrating the value of accelerated learning in a way that resonates with those decision makers.
Exactly. And don't forget to celebrate success along the way. When people experience the power of accelerated learning, share their stories, acknowledge their achievements, and create a culture that celebrates learning and growth.
It's about making learning something that is fun and rewarding and something to be proud of. Okay, this is all making so much sense. But I do want to address the elephant in the room. You know, some people might be skeptical about accelerated learning. They might think it's a fad or a quick fix. How do we respond to those skeptics?
Well, it's healthy to be skeptical. We should always question new approaches and not just jump on any bandwagon. But accelerated learning is not a fad. It's grounded in decades of research and has a proven track record of success.
It's not about taking shortcuts or making learning easier. It's about making it more effective and engaging.
Exactly. Accelerated learning challenges us to rethink our assumptions about how we learn and to embrace a more holistic approach that taps into the full potential of the human brain.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that accelerated learning might not be the right fit for every situation or every learner, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
That's true. But the core principles and techniques can be adapted to a wide range of learning contexts. It's about finding what works best for each individual and situation.
And being willing to experiment and adjust along the way. Another concern I've heard is that accelerated learning might be too focused on speed and efficiency, that it sacrifices depth and complexity for the sake of going fast. What do you say to that?
Well, it's important to remember that accelerated learning is not about sacrificing quality for speed. It's about finding ways to learn more effectively so we can delve deeper into the subjects that we're passionate about.
It's like clearing away the clutter and creating space for more meaningful learning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And accelerated learning recognizes that. Learning is not a linear process. It's often messy, iterative, and full of unexpected turns.
So it's about embracing the adventure of learning.
Okay.
And being open to the detours along the way.
Precisely. Okay, we've talked a lot about concepts and techniques, but let's get practical. How can our listeners actually use this information in their own lives? What are some actionable takeaways they can implement right away?
Yes, let's talk about putting this into practice. I'm ready to start experimenting.
Well, one of the simplest things you can do is to start incorporating microlearning into your daily routine.
Microlearning. I've heard that term before, but can you refresh my memory?
Sure. It's about breaking down learning into small, bite-sized chunks that are easy to digest and retain. Think of it as snack-sized learning. Instead of cramming hours of study, you focus on short, focused bursts of learning, spread throughout the day.
So instead of trying to absorb everything at once, we're spreading it out and making it more manageable.
Exactly. You could watch a 10-minute video on a topic you're interested in, listen to a podcast during your commute, or even just spend a few minutes reviewing flashcards.
It's about making learning fit into the flow of our lives, rather than trying to squeeze it into already packed schedules.
Exactly. And microlearning aligns perfectly with that accelerated learning principle of shorter segments of instruction.
Okay, that's definitely something I can start doing today. What are some other practical tips for our listeners?
Another key takeaway is to start experimenting with different learning techniques. Try out some of the methods we've discussed today and see what resonates with you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's about discovering what works best for your own unique learning style.
It's about becoming more self-aware as a learner and taking ownership of our own learning process.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get creative. Think outside the box and come up with your own unique learning hacks.
I love that. It's about making learning fun and personalized. What other actionable steps can our listeners take?
Well, creating a supportive learning environment is crucial. It could be as simple as finding a quiet space to study, or it could involve joining a study group or connecting with other learners online.
It's about surrounding ourselves with people who inspire and support our learning journey.
Precisely. And technology can be a powerful ally in creating that supportive environment. Join online learning communities, use digital flashcards, access online resources. There's a wealth of tools out there to help you learn more effectively.
It's about leveraging technology to make learning more accessible and engaging.
Absolutely. And most importantly, remember to embrace the joy of learning. See the world as a vast and fascinating playground of knowledge.
It's about rediscovering that childlike curiosity and excitement about learning new things. Okay, this has been so eye-opening. I'm starting to see how accelerated learning isn't just about individual learning. It has the potential to transform entire organizations and even society as a whole.
You're picking up on one of the most exciting aspects of it. One source connects accelerated learning to this concept of the learning organization.
What is a learning organization?
It's an organization that is constantly adapting, evolving, and innovating. By embracing a culture of continuous learning, it's about creating an environment where learning is woven into the fabric of the organization, where employees are empowered to learn new skills, experiment with new ideas, and share their knowledge freely.
It sounds like a recipe for innovation and success.
Exactly. And beyond the organizational level, imagine a world where everyone has access to quality learning opportunities, where learning is valued and celebrated, and where people are empowered to learn and grow throughout their lives.
That's a beautiful vision. It's a world where we can all reach our full potential and contribute to a brighter future.
Precisely. But let's be realistic. Accelerated learning sounds great in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? I could imagine some listeners might be wondering about that.
It's a fair question. How do we convince them that this isn't just pie-in-the-sky idealism?
Well, our sources are full of real-world examples of accelerated learning being successfully implemented in schools, corporations, and government agencies.
Like the hospital-themed customer service training at American Express, the basketball-themed technical skills program at Southern California Edison, and the use of pictograms at Children's Medical Center to explain life-saving procedures.
Those are just a few examples. The key is to start small, experiment, and adapt the principles of accelerated learning to your own unique context.
It's about taking what works and making it your own.
Exactly. Before we wrap up, I want to share some final thoughts that really stuck with me from the sources. One emphasized embracing the messiness of learning. It's not always a neat and tidy process.
It's about being comfortable with ambiguity and trusting in the process even when it feels challenging or uncertain.
Exactly. Another source highlighted the importance of cultivating a sense of wonder about the world. It's about approaching learning with a beginner's mind. Always curious, always seeking new discoveries.
It's about reigniting that childlike joy of learning.
Precisely. And here's one final thought to leave you with. The future belongs to the learners.
Wow, that's powerful. It's a reminder that learning is not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about shaping the future.
Exactly. The more we learn, the more we grow. The more we evolve, the more we can contribute to a better world.
This deep dive has been a real journey. We've covered so much ground, but I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic.
There's always more to explore. And that's the beauty of accelerated learning. It's a lifelong journey of discovery.
I'm excited to continue that journey, and we hope our listeners are feeling inspired to do the same.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent this episode exploring accelerated learning from, all angles, the challenges with the traditional methods, the exciting possibilities of this new approach, and the mindset shift it really requires.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I hope our listeners are feeling inspired and ready to put some of these ideas into practice.
Yeah, me too. As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
That accelerated learning, it isn't just a collection of techniques. It's a whole new way of thinking about learning. It's about embracing curiosity, finding joy in the process,
Yeah.
and believing in our own potential to grow.
It's about becoming lifelong learners, always seeking new knowledge and new experiences. Yeah, absolutely. And it's also about recognizing that learning isn't a solo mission. It's a collaborative adventure. We learn best when we connect with others, share our insights, and support each other's growth.
That's a great point. So, as we wrap up, what's one specific action our listeners can take today to start incorporating accelerated learning into their lives?
Well, I'd say pick one technique from this episode. that really resonated with you and try it out this week. It could be something simple, like incorporating microlearning into your routine. Or maybe you're feeling adventurous and want to experiment with pictograms or using music to create a more vibrant learning environment.
Maybe someone's ready to design a learning game or take an imaginary voyage through a topic they're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. The point is to take action and discover what works for you. Don't be afraid to experiment and share your experiences with us. We'd love to hear about your accelerated learning adventures.
Absolutely. Connect with us on social media. Send us an email or leave a comment on our website. Let's keep this learning revolution going together.
And remember, the future belongs to the learners. So go out there, embrace the joy of learning, and make your mark on the world.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into accelerated learning. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and are feeling inspired to unlock your full potential as learners. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep learning.